Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final Beyond Brooks of the season. I'm super excited to be here today. We have a great finale, and we're really looking forward to it. Before I talk more about Beyond Brooks, we must always start with our toast. Very important to get you all comfortable that you can start sipping on your wine while we run the program. So if everybody wants to raise their glass of Rostaban, the 2017 Rostaban, I would like to toast, our Beyond Brooks toast is to continually live through the lens of others' passions and connect with our community and their craft. So cheers. So Beyond Brooks was an idea that myself and one of my colleagues, who you're going to see shortly, came up with. Back when COVID happened, we really wanted to try to create a program that would entertain, educate, inform, and bring different partners together in our community, especially during the time when we no longer could see anybody and we're all shut down and our world turned virtual. So we have done a Beyond Brooks episode each month since starting in September with a different partner, all sorts of different products, and really have enjoyed all of them. We've had a great variety. We've had great attendance. We've had everywhere from 50 to 225 people that have participated in any given month. And it's accomplished all the things that we have wanted it to. In a time when businesses, there was so much unknown, it's been really amazing to support each other and support each other outside of our individual industries. We've made a lot of friends. We've crossed over a lot of customers. We've gained new ones, they've gained new ones. Everybody did well from a sales standpoint. And at the end of the day, I've had so many of you tell me what an awesome way to spend a Saturday afternoon this has been. And we're going to talk about what might happen next year when we get towards the end of the program. The other great thing about Beyond Brooks and Brooks in general is that every time you spend $1 with us, that we contribute part of those proceeds to 1% for the planet. 1% for the Planet was founded by Yvon Chouinard, and his whole premise is that by being on this earth, we are all stripping from this earth. So whether it be building a house or farming or driving a car, if we all did our part and gave a little bit back, which is the 1%, we could make a big difference. So within our contribution to 1% for the planet, we get to self-direct our funds to one of their environmental-based nonprofits. And many of you, I know, when we did our Beyond Brooks in April, you met Ryan Engelhart from Kiss the Ground, and that is the environmental-based nonprofit that we give our proceeds to. Super inspired. They are doing amazing work. They're actually really starting to make change with their educational intentions about farming and how that can impact our climate. So if you have not seen the documentary Kiss the Ground on Netflix, I highly recommend that you watch it. But thank you for your contribution to Beyond Brooks and Brooks in general, because you are also helping to make a difference. I want to introduce my partner in crime. So Bree is a very dear friend of mine, one of the smartest people in the business. She is a master of wine. She also is the director of education for the Oregon Wine Board and puts on one of the largest wine symposiums that exist in the country. She and I got together early in COVID and talked about what can we do really to bring our communities together and to make sure that we get to keep in touch with people and see each other. And plus we both kind of just have those creative minds that love partnership, that love doing something unique, and that love educating. So Bree, welcome.
Thanks, Janie. And I'm so happy to be here for our final Beyond Brooks for the season. It's a little sad to think that we're going to miss seeing each other over the summer. But like you said, this was part of the reason that we, brought this together in the first place, was so that we could continue to build our relationships and continue to learn and continue to be creative. And it's just been such an amazing season. I've learned so much. I've made new friends. And it's been just fantastic to meet with you every month and everyone who joins us as well. So I hope that everyone has learned a lot and taken home a little bit more about wine and the Brooks story, and also been introduced to a lot of new stories. I know I have, and the Elizabeth Faulkner session the other week, I just ordered more spices from that burlap and barrel, and I just love all of the connections that have been made during this time. So I think we've accomplished what we set out to do, Janie. So I think cheers to us. As usual, for those of you who are on laptops, you will be invited to join the lounge at the end of the session today, where we will all have an individual lounge. So pop on in and say hi. We won't see you for a couple of months, but we will be back in September to do another series. So pop in, say hi, have a glass of wine with us. If you're on a mobile device, you unfortunately won't be able to join the lounge. So if you do have the time, jump across to a laptop or a firm PC. I don't even know what they're called anymore, computers. So jump onto that. If you are having any trouble throughout the session with it freezing or it not keeping up, then just hit that round refresh button on your screen and it will reload. And then if you do have additional problems, just type the questions into the help. Apart from that, you guys all know the drill here. Chat away in the public chat, put your questions in the Q&A section, and please use the upvote. So if someone types in a question, please, vote on which ones you really, really want to hear, and we'll make sure that Jordan answers those first. Our agenda today, we're going to get into the wines first. We're going to talk about the wines and also introduce Jordan as well and why he chose these wines. And Janie's going to run us through what's so special about these two wines. They're two of my favorites and two of the most iconic from Brooks, I think. But Jordan picked them, so he has great taste. And we'll find out why he picked them, especially to go with steak. And Janie will run us through the tasting, and we'll continue to chat and talk. So, get involved. And right now, I would like to bring up Jordan to the stage if he is ready. If not, we will jump right into, there he is.
I'm
Hi,
ready.
Jordan, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can. You look like you're in just an amazing spot right now.
Yes, I'm in my my backyard.
Oh, it's stunning. Look at that hammock.
The hammock, and I'm in St. Helena in Napa Valley. That's where I live currently, but soon to be moving to the Hudson Valley of New York later this summer. So
congratulations. That's exciting.
It's definitely, it's mixed feelings about that. It's very beautiful here when the skies are not filled with smoke, and the forests around us all burned last year. So anyway, but days like today, mid 80s, beautiful sunlight, everything. It's a great day to be outside, great day to grill and to taste Chardonnay or Riesling and Pinot Noir. Yeah.
Well, we're so happy to have you here and to be getting a glimpse into your backyard and feel like we're traveling there with you. Jordan, so many people know you as a wine writer, and then you jumped across into writing cookbooks and barbecue books, the amazing Franklin's barbecue book, and this Franklin steak book is, I have dog-eared pages through this book, and my husband, who doesn't read, he only reads cookbooks, he's already read it twice. And so he said to say thank you personally, because he's learned a lot, and it sent him down other rabbit holes, which I think a lot of your work tends to do for people. You have a really unique angle of looking at different products and different regions, and you really shine a very, very bright light on so many things. Can you tell us a little bit about how you actually made the jump across from wine world to cookbooks and steak?
Well, it's funny that it was kind of driven by sort of a minor depression, anxiety attack that just happens to me. I was just thinking about it as you were talking. that sometimes those things can drive change, which ends up helping us. You know, we naturally find our way out of a tough spot. And in this case, I had just sort of, I'd sort of just kind of hit a wall writing about wine, which I love, and it still fascinates me, but I realize that I can't just be only a wine person, that I have to have other angles. And, you know, most great wine people that I know, most people who are into wine are also into food and into cooking. And that certainly describes me my whole life. So in fact, before I became a wine writer, I'd wanted to become a food writer. And there was just a lot more competition in journalism, you know, 200 food writers for every person writing about wine. And so because I had this interest in wine, editors started coming to me for that. But anyway, the other thing that is interesting that ties it together was that I spent a couple of weeks lying on the couch trying to figure out what I was going to do. It was the dawn of social media, and I just didn't feel that comfortable on social media at that time, not necessarily today either. And anyway, I had written one big article about Texas barbecue for this very great quarterly magazine called The Art of Eating. And my the agent for Aaron Franklin in Austin, Texas, had seen that article, and they loved it because they saw it, and I had sort of talked in this very geeky, very thorough way about barbecue in that article, and that's the way Aaron Franklin thinks about barbecue himself. And so it was the first time he'd seen anything written that really kind of captured his own approach. And I give credit to that actually from being a wine writer, because the wine writer approach, the wine thinker, any of you in the wine world, you know, you have to become sort of a semi-master of so many subjects, you know, whether it's viticulture and winemaking and storing and aging and all of these things all around the world. And so it just, wine writing in general sort of requires a very thorough approach. And so that translated instantly to barbecue, strangely enough. And then I just use that approach on steak as well, which is, you know, a simple thing, but, you know, if you want to go deep on it, then you can go very, very deep, as we did in this book, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea the depth of the subject, and that's when you weren't showing up in the pre. I was like, I know that I've read this, but I cannot talk about, I cannot speak comfortably about any of this. So yeah, we're super excited to have you here. And did you actually, you know, were you introduced to Brooks from the wine side, or how did you and the Brooks connection come together? Because I know you and Janie have been long friends.
I'm just going to light my coals for the demo.
Okay. Great.
And Bree, there is one question so far about whether or not people should be taking their steaks out of the fridge to let them warm up. I would imagine so, to come to room temperature.
I think that would probably be a good idea, but let's ask the expert.
I probably should have done that a little while ago. Sorry, I got caught up.
No problem. We can talk for, we can fill space. Jordan, should people be taking their steaks out of the fridge to let them come up to room temperature a bit at the moment?
Okay, that's a great question. And so to me, it always depends on how thick your steak is and exactly how you're going to cook it. So if it's a very thick steak, like a Côte de Boeuf is, you know, we use a French term for, you know, 2 to 3 inch rib cut. You know, you might want to take that out a few hours in advance.
Okay.
The idea of taking it out 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes doesn't make any sense, because it takes much, much longer than that for the meat to actually come up to temperature. In this case, the steaks that I'm going to be cooking here for myself and my family they're a little bit thinner. And so in this case, I have left them in the fridge because I actually want them to sort of repel the heat a little bit so that I can cook them for longer. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to grill them, you know, straight on or right above the coals, very close over high heat. Then I'm going to take them off and shut the lid and show you a technique that I use to get a little bit of extra smoke on them. So I want them to cook a little bit more slowly. And thus I think that they're good to go straight out of the fridge. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, as to Brooks, so my association with Brooks goes back, a long way, and back to Jimmy Brooks, who created all of it. And I think it must have been at IPNC or something like that back in 2004, or was it in 2004, Janie?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I met him, and I was there as a young wine journalist. I think they invited me to come and experience IPNC. And I met him and on the first day, and we just started having incredible conversation. And he was also very avid and very excited and full of ideas and passion. And so we kept seeing each other at the events and hanging out, and it was just, we were becoming friends. And when you meet someone and in the first 5 minutes you're like, this is my person, I get this vibe, and he was like that, or we had that kind of connection. And in fact, then he started saying that, like, stealing me away from a couple of the events that I was supposed to officially be at. He would say, like, here, I just want to show you my property, and it's where Brooks Winery is now, I think. And he said, I'm planning a vineyard here, and it was just fairly barren. And it was a little bit remote at that time. There wasn't as much infrastructure out there. And anyway, and then he convinced me, again, I was at this weird moment where I think I was feeling some depression or something, not sure about my writing career at that moment. And I told him that I was interested in, oh, sorry. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
That's our, we have a peacock that lives in the area, and it's a big nuisance. He screams like a pterodactyl at all hours of the night. It's way worse than having like a rooster. Anyway, so I told him that I was, still thinking maybe I wanted to do more winemaking, and he invited me that year to come and help him with harvest. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I said, I'll come up. And then I heard from a friend right just days before I was about to buy my plane ticket to go up. I heard from a friend in the wine business that Jimmy had died. And I was, of course, shocked. And I didn't even know what to do, because I didn't know anyone around him really, or anything. And actually, Janie, it's interesting because I was thinking about it today, and I recall, I think like a couple of weeks later, I got a text from Jimmy's phone, and it was you texting me. You were probably going through and following up on things, and harvest had already happened. And I think you said, oh, sorry, we're in the middle of it, and you still invited me to come up, but I'd gone otherwise. So anyway, it was a very, I might have, things could have turned out very differently. I could have ended up working harvest at Brooks and having an even closer relationship, and who knows where that would have led. But it's been amazing since then. Of course, I have so much respect for and admiration for Janie and what she's done, and building this brand and staying true to it, like to Jimmy's vision, to the dot. And I think it's incredible. And I know he would be so proud of what you've built, from his seed. So anyway, and that's why I'm really honored and that you asked me to do this today, and pleased. And plus, I love the wines.
Yeah, I recall a IPNC barbecue session that you did a few years back, and you slept at the Rostaban.
Yeah. I keep coming back to Rostaban.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
That's so funny, because I always come back to Ara, and and I love that. I just love Riesling from this area, and it's the wine that spoke to me so much when I first met Janie. And I think Brooks people have something in their blood about that instant connection, that you become fast friends. And and I love that. I mean, talk about integrity to stick to a program that her brother believed in. Riesling is a tough sell, a lot of the time. No one really understands it. And to have so many Rieslings every year I come here and Janie's got another single vineyard Riesling that she's protecting from being torn out of the ground because people now want to plant Chardonnay, of course, so I just have so much admiration and respect for Janie as well, and for following her brother's vision.
And it's an uphill climb always, Riesling.
Right. And it's so delicious.
I just want to introduce my wife, Christy.
Christy!
Hi, Christy.
She's my sommelier for today.
Yes, I'm the sommelier, and I just came for the wine.
Yeah.
Like you,
for the food.
I'm a huge fan of the Riesling. And thank you, Janie, for including Jordan on this fun day. He's been looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Cheers, well, Chris. Cheers.
So let's talk about the wines. This is a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Are we starting with the Rastaban, Janie?
Let's start with Rastaban.
Chrissy, you're a wine expert yourself, so you need to stay in here as well. I mean, you're as good as a master of wine, so you're the way that you teach. And I know so many students that come out of your program just raving about you. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so honored to have you here and being part of this. So we need you talking about the wines as well.
It's like a double whammy with these two.
Right?
He really just wanted me to run food and bring more, bring wine and be his sous chef essentially, but sommelier.
Okay, so both of these wines, so the story behind the Rastaban and Ara labels, these wines were both made by Jimmy for the first time in 2003. And they were bottled in August of 2004, right before he passed away. So he never had the opportunity to take these wines to market. They were the first wines I ever set a price point for. I had to figure out how they fit into the portfolio. But his idea was to kind of encapsulate and honor the places that meant the most to him for his brand. So the Rastaban is 100% from our estate vineyard, which he found in his hunt for Old Vine Riesling. We have Pommard that was planted in 1974, and then some Dijon clones that replaced Chardonnay in the late 90s. So it's a blend of all three. Our vineyard's certified biodynamic. It's east facing, so it gets a lot of really great morning sun, but it doesn't get the late afternoon hot sun. It's on volcanic soil, and it's about 750 feet in elevation. And all of those things really contribute to the resulting wine. The Riesling is really paying gratitude to the first two Riesling vineyards Jimmy ever found. So the very first one he started working with in 1998 was Yamhill Vineyard, owned by Ralph Stein, planted in 1984. And it's on marine sedimentary soil, which produces a really different style of Riesling fruit profile. And then the other half is from our estate vineyard, which was the second Riesling vineyard Jimmy found that was planted also back in 1974, like the Pinot Noir, but it's on volcanic soil. And so his concept for this Riesling was not only to marry his first two Riesling sources, but two of the oldest vine sources in the valley and from two different soil types so that you really could show the breadth of what you could do with Riesling in the Willamette Valley. So both very special wines.
What about the names?
So they're both named after stars. So the Rastaban is a single star. It's the eye of the dragon in the constellation Draco. Is a reflection of our label. And then the Ara is the altar. It's a constellation called the altar.
Cool.
Very cool.
And does that link into the biodynamics as well? Because Jimmy was the first person to really sort of endorse and bring biodynamics to the Willamette Valley, and I think he worked at or brought biodynamics to one of the still largest biodynamic vineyards in the valley.
Yeah, and he wrote more books on signs and symbols and constellations, and all of that is kind of related to the spiritual sense of biodynamics for sure.
Yeah, I think it must have been at Maysara that I met Jimmy.
Mhm.
He was working there then,
Yeah.
you know. And yes, I remember being so impressed. One, I mean, I've sort of checked, and I don't think any other place has more acreage under biodynamic farming than they do. And it's true. Jimmy was way ahead of the curve on that. You know, it was amazing.
Yeah, he really was, and they have definitely really honored his what he started there as well. So that's nice to see again as well. Janie, the 2017 vintage of the Rastaban. 2017 was a pretty warm year up here in the valley. We had a number of days that were, you know, pushing 100 and over 100. And how did I'm sitting here at the moment looking out at the vines that this wine comes from. So how did, and I can see this nice little ripple of breeze coming through the biodynamic garden, that the veggie garden that Normal sources all their food from. And how did the elevation and the winds here in 2017 impact the style of this wine? Because for a hot vintage, it's actually, you know, quite pale and still quite delicate and not as ripe and as extracted as I see many 2017s out there. And so is that more due to the positioning of the vineyard, or is it down to Chris's decision to pick his style?
It's a little bit of both. You know, we had more days over 100 degrees in 2017 than we really had ever had in a vintage. So while, you know, heat units, we get a lot of days in the mid to high 90s. We rarely get those high spikes above 100 degrees. And it was so stressful on the vines that it actually shut them down for a bit in August, which was extremely worrisome across the valley. But it really ended up just extending our hang time. And one of the benefits that we have, being 750 feet in elevation and in the Eola Amity Hills, is we get those Van Duzer winds. So we get the winds off the Pacific Ocean every afternoon in the summer that will change the vineyard temperature by 15 degrees in the late afternoon. So the combination of that with really just that slowing of the ripening cycle made a huge difference in terms of the fruit that we got off our vineyard. You know, and then Chris's approach to fermentation is really to work on the lowest possible fermentation temperatures he can. And I love to compare it simmering versus boiling. When you simmer something, you're really getting a longer time of extraction, a slower time of extraction, more complexity than when you boil something. And so that really complements the warmer vintages as well in terms of maintaining more complexity, more acid, and by running those cooler fermentation temperatures.
Yeah, and I think that's something important that you know, people maybe don't know or don't, you know, understand, is that when you have, you know, these winds here, the berries tend to be a little bit smaller than in other AVAs in the Eola Amity Hills. And so this, and also the consistency of the winds also means that the skins thicken up a bit more than in other AVAs as well. So it has sort of a double effect of giving more skin to juice ratio for your berries, protecting some of the acidity that are in those berries as well. But also those thicker skins can mean that in hot vintages, if you, like to use your analogy, if you know, cook at a warm fermentation temperature, which, you know, yeast are likely to do when there's a lot of sugar involved, you can really extract a lot of very hard tannins from those skins as well, and also from the seeds. And so you don't really want to do that either, because it takes all of the delicacy out of the Pinot Noir grape, which is what, you know, so many of us love about it. And so this is, you know, a really well done job by Chris to really, you know, be calm in that approach and be really gentle in that extraction process and patient with a fermentation that can, you know, can really light up and extract a lot. So it's really lovely to see, you know, the beautiful fruit and the freshness in this wine as well, and just the elegance of the tannins. They're nice and fine. Jordan, why did you choose Rastaban for the steak? Was it simply because you had that connection to this place from being here with Jimmy?
No, actually, it was just pure. Christy and I, we did a taste test, and Janie had sent us a few different Pinots and Rieslings, and we one night a couple of months ago, I cooked some steaks and we opened up the wines and tasted, and these two were without question the very best with steaks, and in fact, and it wasn't that they just led the pack; they were also very good with steak. And I think one with regard to the Rastaban, there's just there's a complexity to it that's even in a young wine. If you really breathe in deeply and taste it, you can see that there's a lot going on. And I just think that really connected with the complexities in the meat and in the rub, that we were also testing. Texturally, it's dense, like you said, it looks light, but it's got a concentration and a density that really holds up well with meat. And look here, our house is literally surrounded on three sides by Cabernet vineyards, but I'm not of the school that you need to have a big cab and a slab. I think that more delicate wines with acidity, complexity, and even as long as they have enough concentration to stand up to the meat. And so the Rastaban was great like that. And I'm looking forward to trying it again with the steak here in a few minutes. Then as far as the Riesling, this was an interesting thing. Early on in my career, right after I'd moved to San Francisco and had decided to try my luck writing about wine, I met a woman named Debbie Zacharias, who is a well-known. She owns a wine shop here, and she had a restaurant at the time. Coincidentally, that's also what brought Christy to San Francisco just a year before I got there. And I remember asking Debbie, I needed some ideas to pitch to Food and Wine magazine, and I said, "What's a good idea? Do you have anything cool going on that you can tell me about?" And she said, "Well, I and like the group of people that I hang out with, we're really into drinking Riesling with steak. Do you think you could do anything on that?" I pitched the idea, didn't fly for the.
Of course not.
Debbie's always so ahead of her time.
Yes.
She's such a visionary.
But it's funny because I recalled that and I thought, well, Riesling does go surprisingly well with steak for the opposite reason that Pinot Noir does, of course. But it's the two of them are a wonderful example of both sides of the coin, sort of something that complements and something that contrasts. And so the Riesling, again, it wouldn't work if it was watery or light. The Ara has also incredible focus and incredible density in its own way, and it just compacts a lot of flavors into one wine, and so it just cuts through the steak like a well-sharpened knife, and exactly what you want to do, and it refreshes the palate as it should. So it's a different experience than drinking red wine with steak, but I think it's also delightful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's, actually quite special about specifically the Brooks Rieslings and many, Rieslings in the Willamette Valley, but I definitely find it in the Brooks is that there's so much depth and concentration, and they really don't shy away from, we have so much UV light here, and we get such richness and great, flavor development in the skins that it just gives this extract to the palate. And so it gives it another dimension, which really does make it appropriate to have with steak instead of being, like you say, watery or something that you can't do with anything other than like oysters. So
and also back on the Rastaban, I'm really glad that you mentioned the tannins earlier, because it's when a lot of people when we talk about tannins, people think about astringency and they think about grip and all of that. And when you taste the Rostobon, you get this other perspective on tannins, which are easy to overlook because they're so fine and so polished. But that doesn't mean that there's an incredible concentration of them, and that they are and just so many, but they're fine and they're varied, and they coat the mouth in a beautiful way that you almost don't even notice it's happening, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point, actually. And now I'm going to be thinking about the next time I eat a steak, I'm going to have Rostobon with it so that I can think about the tannins and the texture of the steak with those tannins as well, because we spend so much time thinking about tannins, and especially for pairing steak. And so I love that you say, you don't have to have a Cabernet, because I mean, those tannins can be quite coarse and quite aggressive, and then compounded by the very generally heavy oak use that goes along with Cabernet, especially from Napa. But that's a real double down on those flavors, and you don't really need it. You don't need that maturation and élevage time as much with the Rostobon. So I love thinking about that. And it's what you do so well, Jordan, is make us think about, the adjacent and bringing new light to common things that we're always talking and thinking about. So
and nothing against also,
everything against Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, Jordan. Come on.
Yes. Well, no, but I would just say that we have like a room full of Cabernet, basically, which we've accumulated over the years. Some bought, but mostly we get given a lot of Cabernet living here in Napa Valley.
Yeah.
And we have to have an excuse to drink it occasionally. So steak can work in that regard.
So I just opened up the rub to smell it, and then I had another sip of Rostobon, and I'm just so curious, Jordan, how you approached to the recipe for the rub. I know Norma actually put it together. She added a little bit of the black lime, but talk to me about how you approach making rubs for steaks like this.
Well, so in this case, I just wanted, I'm a big fan, a big believer, I think we all are, in umami. And in this case, I thought, just what is the best way to sort of up the umami quotient on the steak, and so I just went to things that I really like, and things that often I will say. I think there's sort of a marinade recipe in the book that I just that I think everyone here got the book, and so you'll see that the rub was kind of my attempt to reimagine that marinade in the form of a rub that you could keep around, because the marinade requires a fair bit of chopping, and it's got anchovies and garlic and rosemary and marjoram and all these things. And so I thought, okay, let me just try to recreate that. Plus, and in honor of Oregon, also I added mushroom powder, and so I was just trying to think of all these things that I love to put on steak, and basically, so there's nothing scientific about it. Although I will say, and then I sent my sort of formula to Chef Norma, and her addition of black lime was really brilliant, by the way. I liked what you just sent back to me, her formulation, better than what I had been doing myself. So I really thank her for that. I don't even know what black lime is, but it worked. Bree, can you
we didn't either until last month.
what is black lime?
So actually, Elizabeth Faulkner introduced us to black lime in the salad, the kale salad that she made with us, and it's limes that are left outside to turn black and basically, get to that fermentation stage, and they're dried out in the sun, and then they're ground up into this black lime. And It's amazing. Yeah. And for me, I was like, oh, it's like Sauvignon Blanc, or there, there was just so much intensity to this black lime. And I'm using it all the time now as well. So it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to get some because it just aromatically, this will be my first chance to taste the rub on the steaks with the addition of black lime. But I will say that it pulled all of it together and gave these lifted notes that weren't in there before. So I thank Chef Norma for that. Yeah.
So Burlap and Barrel is the vendor that Elizabeth sent us to for the spices, and they make it. It's great.
Good.
They have some amazing spices on there, and they're all fair trade, and yeah, they're fantastic. So
I'll order some. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then just briefly, I just wanted to, do we have a minute just to kind of give an introduction to the book?
Yeah, please.
And because when I started this concept, I was going to write this with or without Aaron Franklin. I was keen to do a book on steak, and then luckily Aaron wanted to do it with me. And he's just, obviously he's a barbecue superstar, but he is also, people didn't know it, but I've spent enough time with him at his home to realize that his talents for smoking meats it's also just part of a larger innate talent for cooking meat perfectly, effortlessly. One of those guys who can just knows intuitively when to flip the meat, when to move it. Like he had that touch that I don't necessarily have naturally. And I always marveled at the ease with which he cooked everything perfectly, So, and so people, anyway, I'm glad he signed on to do this with me. But people would say, how could you get a whole book out of cooking steaks, right? It's the simplest thing in the world. And given that he's like a live fire guy, and I am too, we didn't even really approach cast iron steak cooking, which I do think is also phenomenal, and possibly the very best way to get a really great crust, which is one of the things that we should all be after. I think that's one of the most important parts about cooking steak. But anyway, the other thing that I really that I'm proud about in this book, and I could have even written longer, is just the idea of knowing your meat, and whether it's the cut that you're cooking, or but especially it's where the animal came from and how it was raised. And I think this is really important to just in general in these times. Of course I'm a believer in the value of meat and the value of ruminant animals on our land, but also but I believe, of course, in their ethical treatment and all of that. And so the good thing is that all of that works towards having also the best meat to eat. It really all plays into the same stream. And so I spent time searching out, finding the best meats, going around the world to various places to talk to the people who raised it and understand why. And I think that's just there's nothing better, especially locally, wherever people are. There's great farmers, ranchers everywhere that you can find, and I think that's the very best possible way to source it. So that's it. And then also there's a lot of talk about aging meat, which is another interesting topic and all that. And then there's a few recipes, not much. There's a big part about butchery and knowing your cuts, and then a lot about grilling. And so I guess, is it time that we should look into that here?
Yeah, there's just one question about how heavily do you apply the rub? Is it sort of a taste thing, or what are you looking for?
Okay, that's a very good question. I applied it. I'm not sure exactly what people would call heavy. I made sure the entire surface of the meat was coated, so that's probably fairly heavy. Also, and this I would have to play with it more than I was able to for this project. But I want to see how much salt was in it and whether there was enough. Or so. In fact, with these ones that I did, because another thing about wine people, we can never have enough salt. Like
so true.
And so I actually added a little bit of extra like Malden salt on top while I was letting it sit in the fridge, which I did for like about a day and a half for these cuts, you know. So I got 3 just for fun, you know. They'll get eaten eventually. This one is quite thick, actually. That's a ribeye. I have a hanger steak, which is one of my favorites. That's this thin little guy. In
nice.
France, it's known as the anglais, and it's got a great flavor. It's a wonderful kind of bistro steak, not super, not as marbled as the ribeye or anything like that, but it goes right near the heart, and it's a muscle that has it's got a little bit of deeper flavor, I think, because it's so close to the organs and it's got so much blood flowing through it. So it's got incredible flavor, but it's also dense. It requires a fair bit of cooking, even though it's not big. It takes a while for the heat to really penetrate it, you know. And then I have another cut, which we talk about in the book. It's called the flat iron, and this was a steak. It's interesting. I haven't read this part in a while, so I can't remember all the details, but it's that was kind of discovered, I believe, in the 90s. And it's interesting that cuts of beef can still be discovered, but that's kind of part of the art of what they call fabrication, which is taking apart an animal and discovering the muscles and the way they connect and all of that. And a team at a university basically found that this steak, which comes out of the shoulder, which is normally would be very tough. That's part of a cow that does a lot of work supporting the body, you know. And so, but they found that they could extract this very tender, beautiful cut right out of it, you know. And so you'll see flat irons all the time, and they're great shape, they're great size, easy to cook. I think it's a good cut. And by the way, I noticed at our local grocery store, which is very good, they have a few different kinds of meat. It's all pretty high end because this is shishi Napa Valley living, you know. But their low end stuff is from a cooperative in Oregon. It's called just like Oregon Country Beef or something like that, which I know is just, it's a cooperative in a way that it kind of unites a bunch of ranchers from around the state, and they have to meet certain quality guidelines and farming guidelines, and then it all gets sold under the same label. So anyway,
Cool.
so I got all Oregon meat.
Nice.
For
Yay. I love it.
So anyway, I'm gonna just start these, okay? And we can keep talking. Maybe Christy can come back in. You'll see me. I'm gonna dump my coals now. I let them kind of mature because I was late starting them in the chimney for longer than I might normally, but I'm going to dump them and then just get going. And Christy could come back in, and it's warm here. So Janie, don't be mad that she put an ice cube in her Riesling.
I love it.
And then she was trying to tell me not to tell you.
Christy, I do that all the time.
So
Very warm here.
I'm so excited for you guys. Jordan shared your move. You're moving to the Hudson Valley. I did a dinner at the CIA there like 2 years ago. It's an amazing, amazing campus.
Well, we'll have you back, Janie, for sure. More than once.
Yeah,
Thank
good for you.
Thank you. We'll fill you in on that soon. I didn't know he'd planned to tell you on this call, but next time.
He told me earlier in the week, but I also have a group of, I think there's 8 of them that went to Spain with us a couple of years ago that live there in the Hudson Valley, and that's who they do a dinner once a year.
Yeah.
CIA, and they were the ones that had me out. So I'll make sure I connect you with that group too.
Well, thank you. You know, there is, it's as far away as they are, the Willamette Valley and the Hudson Valley, of course, entirely different terroirs and different places, but they share something in common that we've missed here in our own beloved Napa Valley, which is there's wineries only in the Napa Valley. There's wineries only. And also there's excellent restaurants and beautiful places. But the Napa Valley has outlawed breweries and distilleries and dairies, cheeseries, as I like to call them, cremeries. Maybe not cremeries, but they've outlawed other alcoholic beverage competition. And for better or for worse, I know that the Willamette Valley is rich in breweries and farms and distilleries. And I think that builds a wonderful community. And the Hudson Valley is very similar with breweries and distilleries and cideries.
Cideries, yes.
And so I think there's that's a similarity that the Hudson Valley and the Willamette Valley share. Of
Christy,
course,
I'm so happy that you
allows for other alcoholic beverage production, but the Napa Valley does not.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you recognize that as well. And for me, it's something that I really cherish about living in the Willamette Valley, is that I have, my neighbors or my, winemaker friends, they're making cider off their properties as well, which, this valley was a huge orchard area as well. And it really isn't a monoculture of the vine here yet. And I really so hope, I live across from a beautiful organic cow ranch, beef ranch, and sheep, and there's a vineyard just across from it, and I just really love that community, and I feel like it keeps us honest,
Yes, Bree, and I can understand why wine lovers and wine tourism isn't benefited by also visiting a cidery or a brewery as well. So I completely agree with you. I think it is mutually beneficial, and it builds community. So I see that some of your Brooks fans are asking about his grilling process. So I don't want to take away from that.
Yeah. Maybe Hagen, could you bring maybe Janie and I off the screen so that Jordan can be large on the screen?
Wow, I'm large on the screen. Okay. Oh, and just one quick note on ice cubes in wine. That with no offense to any wine, Christy and I agree that wine temperature is one of the most underrated qualities of enjoying a wine, and that we have found that dipping an ice cube for a few seconds into a wine to just bring it down, even if it creates a little bit of dilution, is far better than drinking a wine that's too warm. And as far as it definitely impacts our enjoyment of it. And so, especially a wine like Ara that can handle a few drops of water added to it in order to make it taste better, we think it's a fair trade-off. Okay, so let me see. All right. You can see this is my my setup here. We talk a lot about this grill in the book, the PK. Yeah, that helps, Christy. The PK grill, it's called. It's an old design from the 50s that was picked up and recreated by a company in Arkansas. And we love it because it is it's cast aluminum, so it's very thick and heavy, which means it holds temperature better than this. I have right over here a Weber classic one right there, and that's a $50 grill, and it's so thin, the metal, that it doesn't retain heat very well, so it's not great for longer cooks, smoking and things like that. This one now I pretty much just use for paella because a pan fits on it, and also I burn logs in it if I'm going to say cook. My favorite way to cook is just with wood coals, not with charcoal. I'm not doing that today because that takes hours to start burning down a couple of logs and things like that. But then I will take Aaron Franklin's favorite tool, the shovel, and I will scoop up the wood coals from this and put them over here. Now I have to actually watch out because my ribeye is flaming. So I'm just going to pull that off for a second. Now, yeah, these are very hot coals, so I should have been watching that. But like I said, the meat was cold. So what I'm doing is right now I'm giving it a pre-sear, very heavy pre-sear, and basically cooking the outside. And then what I'm going to do, this is one of my favorite techniques, is I'm going to finish it by taking it off the heat, off the direct heat, closing the lid, and then I take wood chunks. So you can buy these at most hardware stores. It's just a chunk of, this is cherry wood. And I like to put it right over the coal. And then it will start smoking and add some of that wood smoke, which, you know, the smoke from charcoal is not great. It's charcoal is just wood that's had all of the great aromatic properties of wood and flavor properties removed. So it's just almost pure carbon. Thus, it heats very well and it retains heat, and it's great for that. But as far as the smoke, the very little bit of smoke that does come off of charcoal is not fantastic.
And so, Jordan, can you grab those chunks of wood that you just put on there?
Yeah.
From the hardware store or a grill store?
Yeah, they sell them in. Here's a bag right here. That's just a bag of chunks, wood chunks.
Oh, that's great.
This is hickory, yeah, but I'm not using that. That's an unopened bag. All that flare up that I wasn't paying attention to is coming from the ribeye, because that has a big fat cap on the side. So I didn't manage that especially well because I was distracted. But
so you don't want that then, because this is why I don't cook steak at home, because I have not absorbed your book yet, but I normally only buy a steak when I'm out because I know it's been cooked well. But so you don't want to have the flames come up and char the outside of it. You want to get
a little bit, but you don't want it to happen for too long, because you don't want the flavor of burnt meat on the outside. So
gotcha.
The way to do that, is just to manage it, either taking it off the flames while they're coming up, or waiting till your coals get lower. The PK grill, by the way, it's this part didn't make it into the book, but I interviewed a guy who runs these steak cooking competitions around the country, and these are like barbecue competitions but with steak. And a lot of the winning people, he said, end up using the PK grill because you've got the coals are actually very close to the grill surface, unlike, say, a Weber where they're much farther down. So you get more intense heat that way. So
that allows for the perfect char on the outside. It's
really good for searing because you want the height. So remember, these came straight out of the fridge too. So the insides will still be quite cool. And I'm going to measure that soon with another tool that we recommend in the book, which is the Thermapen, which is like the Rolls Royce of digital thermometers. Anyway, so that's pretty well seared. The ribeye could maybe use a little bit more, but I don't want to burn it too much. If that fat on the side starts dripping down. So, but I'll let it get a little bit more, and then I'm going to close it. Because let me take a reading, even on, say, that flat iron. Yeah, it's only at 102 in the so it's actually getting close up there, but it still could go. We like it sort of rare to medium rare, which I would say take it up to about 110, 115, and then let it carry over. So the other thing is that a lot of chefs say just flip it once, don't flip too much. I don't subscribe to that. If I was just cooking this myself and not doing this demo, I'd be flipping it even a lot more. I think it's you get a better crust by flipping it fairly often. So in this case, I'm going to take it off now. We'll check the internal. Yeah, it's only at about 90, 95 on the ribeye. So these can go a little bit longer. So now I'm just going to, the hottest part of the fire, I'm putting the wood chunk right there, and then I'm going to close the top. Another nice thing about these grills is that you've got these air vents below and above. And I don't know if you can see, but already that's all the smoke that's coming from, I don't know if it's showing up on
we can see that, yeah.
This one, not out of this one. So, and that's all from those wood chunks. That's not charcoal smoke. Charcoal doesn't produce that much smoke on its own once it's lit.
Okay.
And so it's so I'm heating up those wood chunks. They're creating the smoke, and it's passing across over the meat and going out on this side. So so that's how I'm going to finish getting. I'll go the last 10 degrees of that I want on the meat, and then we will and then so that'll be like a few minutes, and I'll let it get just some smoke to give it that beautiful charry, smoky flavor that we like. Yeah.
So you said just a few minutes. So it really doesn't take that long to get a little bit of that really charry smoke flavor in there.
Yeah, because also that's one nice thing about fat and about steak is the fat just seems to actually really absorb the smoke molecules, So when you have a nice piece of well marbled beef, which America has more than any other country for sure, it picks up the smoke very quickly, and in this case I only did like about a half a chimney full of charcoal. You don't need that much to cook a steak. I also have this is a new from the PK company. You see that orange thing down there? Let me see there.
Yeah. What is that?
They just came out with it. It's called the PK Go. It's their little hibachi. I thought about using that. That's basically, I got that just for doing steaks when you don't want to use a whole lot of charcoal to heat up your whole big grill, A little hibachi is great. Or, and it doesn't have to just be steaks. It could be whatever, but small amounts, Yeah.
Show me that.
Oh, these are, we've got the, these heat resistant gloves are very useful for people who grill a lot. So I recommend these. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we're just getting all the good Father's Day presents coming out right here. I'm making a list.
Okay, I'll take the internal temperature again here. Still just at 100 there.
So you're just looking for a little bit higher?
Yeah, this one's done. So the
And then do you rest the steak once you've pulled it off the grill, or how long do you recommend?
Yeah, I rest it for a few minutes. I don't think it's for a large piece of meat, not a steak. I think it's or for a very thick steak, I would rest that for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and especially something bigger like a brisket or a pork shoulder or a leg of lamb. I would rest that definitely for 15 to an hour, depending on how long I think it just gets better. But with the steak, I don't think it really needs that much. People say that the juices reabsorb, but I don't think that they necessarily do. We did trials, if you take it off and you let it rest and then you cut into it, the juices still come out on the plate. And that's just a nice, I like to dip I'm sure we all do that. Either, use that juice or it comes out on the cutting board and you pour it back over, You know,
Oh yeah.
that's something that we all like to do. So so in this case, I'll let these rest just like a minute or two, and then I'll cut into those. And then this one needs about another 5 minutes on the grill. So yeah.
Great.
And this one is called the this is their high-end model. It's called the PK 360.
Okay.
I have another one which is the normal one too, but I've loaned it to my neighbor who is right over there. Not my neighbor herself, but her house is right there. And so she didn't have a grill when she moved in right before the pandemic, and so I loaned her that one. And then Christy over here off camera is always complaining about how many grills that I have.
Well, how many grills does a family of 2 really need?
Yeah.
But it's one of that family's livelihoods, you know.
We're down to 4, which is better than 5, but
There's
yet,
another one on the way
and yet, and
There's
yet.
another one on the way.
after we move. There's actually 2 more on the way. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What
That's
are the
news.
differences? Yeah, why I understand the Weber and the hibachi style for if you're mobile, but
Well, I'm really eager to taste how the rub is on the steak, though.
yes. Yes, I want you and Christy to give us a tasting note and rundown of how the rub tastes and how it tastes with the wines as well, with the addition of the black lime.
Oh, Jordan, it looks like a guest is asking if the rub will work well with other meats or maybe, and also richer meaty.
Fish. Yeah.
Wow, that's very good. Okay, so I've only tried the rub with pork, and I thought it was maybe even better than on the beef.
Wow.
So I definitely say throw it on some pork chops and stuff like that, especially the mushroom powder. And I love mushroom as a side dish with steak. And you'll see in the book that there's a few recipes for some of our favorite sides. But again, Aaron and I like to write books more about technique than about recipes. And the recipes, the side recipes are incredibly simple in there. Like there's sauteed mushrooms, you know. In fact, there's even, it's one of the biggest jokes for us, but I think it's so important. There's a recipe for raw tomatoes, which is just so delicious though. With, you know, in tomato season, it's so delicious to just cut up a raw tomato and put some olive oil and sea salt on it and just serve it right like that. And so I just wanted to remind people of that fact, you know.
I love that.
So I included it as a recipe. But no, it's great. The rub is. Christy, do you want to have a taste?
Sure.
Oh, good.
Forks?
No, there's one right there. Help yourself. It's I could see it being really good on fish though too. Like for instance, I don't know if here on the West Coast in the you know, it's salmon season, and I could imagine the rub being great on salmon. I think it's also going to be very good with anything on the grill that gets a little bit of that smoky character. It's just the mushrooms and the umami and the herbs in it. What do you think, Christy?
Well, I just did my technique of sip, taste, sip, which I often do with my students, and it was magnificent. It really, really sings. The Rastaban and the steak. Wow, the steak is so delicious.
Oh.
And the wine.
She doesn't usually say that.
Well, the wine is magnificent. It really, really, really works. And the rub is it's complex and subtle. Like it's not over the top. It's very umami rich for sure. And the wine just sings. You know, that's so interesting about food and wine pairing. Janie and Bree, I'm sure you agree. We love wine. We have it solo sometimes. We need food. It fuels us and nourishes us. But when you have the perfect pairing and they come together, it's like a whole nother level. It's just a triumphant experience, because again, the wine on its own, delicious. The meat on its own, delicious. But when you bring them together, it's just a whole nother level. And it really, when you pay attention to that next level, you reap the rewards. You really do. So I have to say, you, as the recipient of too much steak over the last few years of research and development, this is certainly one of the better lunches we've had.
Great.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just pulled off the ribeye. It was at about 120 internal, which is maybe a little bit more than I would normally do it, but it's fine. You know, that'll take it to a nice medium rare. Christy is she's of French extraction, so she really likes very rare steaks, and I'm not great at cooking them like that. I sort of like the cooking process too much to like pull them off that soon, you know.
That's true. If I had a nickel for every time I said, please don't overcook the meat, that would be a thing. But you know, also the thing about the Pinot Noir and the judicious use of oak that harmonizes so well and makes the wine additionally aromatic and woodsy and earthy and spicy and in a lovely spicy note, the sort of cinnamon nutmeg thing, in addition to all the beautiful red fruit. That's the thing that I think makes a great Pinot Noir work very well with steak like this, because there's so much umami in the steak. It's so savory. It's so, it's so full of flavor, but so is the wine. And then you have those complementary aromas and flavors, but then you have the acidity in the wine that clearly cuts through the richness of the steak, and that's what makes the whole pairing so triumphant.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, so I
want you to try the Riesling now.
yeah, and I just pulled off the ribeye, and I thought, like, I tasted it. It's very unctuous with especially the spinalis, which is the ribeye cap, which I think is probably the best piece of meat on everything. It's that ring that goes around a full ribeye. Mm-hmm. It's a different muscle than the rest, and it's the perfect combination of flavor and marbling. It's very tender, but also rich. Anyway, perfect with the Riesling, because the acidity in the Riesling just knifes through that marbling.
Mm. I'm very jealous right now.
Wow.
No, it's not like when Elizabeth and we were all in the same location and we could just run over and grab our portion. But tomorrow, I'm making mine tomorrow.
I'm doing mine tonight.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have a ribeye, make sure that it has the ribeye cap.
Okay.
And then eat it. The greatest steakhouse restaurant in the world in Spain, about 3 hours outside of Madrid. I talk about it in the book. He cooks these giant rib steaks from cattle that he's raised himself up to like 12 to 15 years age, which is about 12 times or 10 times longer than what American cattle are. Yeah. Anyway, so they're very big, and he cuts it all up in a very special way right at the table side, and he always cuts the spinalis, the cap, separately on its own. And so you can eat it by itself and taste the different muscles that form a ribeye steak, because there's actually, I think, 3 of them. Or 3 separate muscles. But anyway, eat that separately and have it with the Ara. What did you think? Please.
Magnificent. No, I mean, it it's incredible. Everyone needs to drink more Riesling with steak. Like we need a campaign, and
Yes.
we do, because the wine. I mean, this is a white wine that's, it's boxing way above its weight, right? It's a powerhouse of a white wine. Yes, there's Rieslings with a lot of delicacy and nuance, but there's so much intensity, and so it really is a wine that is so versatile, and as you two know so well. But I think a lot of people just think, whoa, I could never have a dry Riesling with a steak. But you take something like the quality of the Ara and other Brooks dry Rieslings, and it's just magnificent. I would encourage everyone to try it so much.
Here's another
it's
tip
really
that
muscled and chiseled. Yeah.
another tip that I just realized. If you have a particularly rich cut, like a ribeye or a New York, rib steaks are the richest. I think go heavier with the rub with those.
Okay.
On the ribeye, I put just as much on as I did on the flat iron, but the flat iron being somewhat leaner, the rub actually stood out more in a way that I really liked. So I would go, if next time I do this, I'm going to go heavier with the rib steak. And again, I love leaving them in the fridge. Like, even if I'm not applying a rub, I'll salt it a day or sometimes 2 days in advance and leave it in the fridge on a rack so it can get air on both sides. Or if it's not on a rack, I'll just flip it when I wake up in the morning, and go 12 hours. You'll see the outside of the meat dry out a little bit. That's fine. It's not going to be dry inside. It actually, the salt draws moisture out of the meat, dissolves, and then it gets pulled back into the meat. And so it's a way of salting the interior of a steak, which is a very dense piece of meat, and so it just seasons the interior very well. And then as it also leaves the outside, as it gets dried out in your fridge, that is wonderful for cooking it and getting a good crust. Because if you don't have the exterior of your meat dry, you won't get the crust, which is the Maillard reaction, which is what creates this symphony of flavors. So you want your meat to be as dry as possible when you cook it, so you get that exterior caramelization, instead of otherwise it would just be kind of like steaming, So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we've picked up so much by just watching you cook, and I think we need to allow you to go and enjoy your pieces of steak before you join the lounge, and maybe bring Janie back to tell us about the rest of the season. And Christy, thank you so much for joining us as well. And
I already picked him up and
so much.
Yeah, right. He's an Oregon dog. Yeah.
He's our Oregon dog, Janie.
He's got.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, he's big, but
He's from Eugene area.
he's from Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
He is lovely.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
He already found the piece of steak that I dropped. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So there's a couple questions.
Mhm.
So, and Jordan, this is this will be a good one for you to respond to. So it says, I noticed your book is charcoal centric. Can you touch on why?
Touch on cooking with natural gas and propane.
And why
Okay.
you pick charcoal?
Okay. So, yes, natural gas and propane are very good for convenience, right? They're not my favorite method. Sometimes, yes, it would be very convenient to be able to grill something and just go out and turn it on. And there's definitely a place for that in the world. But I would especially use that if I had kids around and just needed to cook something fast to get it done. But given that we don't, I prefer the flavor that comes from coals, and also I really just like the activity. When it's gas, it's so predictable, and but when you know what you're going to get, it's just like it's an outdoor stove. But when you're using wood or charcoal, you know, you really have to get to know the coals and get to know your fire and get to know your cooker and all of that. And so it's just, it's dirtier, it's more labor intensive, more time consuming, all of that. But for me, it's one of those things in this age where going the long road is useful. Oh, sorry, we have a helicopter. Oh, we got the peacock and a helicopter coming. We live right there.
Tourists in their helicopter. Last year, when we first started having this conversation about doing this event, I bought the book for my husband for Father's Day, and I got some meats from Carter Country Meats that you recommended from him as well. And it was the first time ever that my husband started his charcoal without using lighter fluid.
Okay. Hey,
yes, he read the book, and I was like, that's amazing. Like, thank you, because that's just never been, it has too much influence, I feel like, on what your food ends up tasting like. So thank you for that, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, oh, that's gross. Stanley was just licking the ends of my tongs, you know. We've accepted that our microbiome is half dog microbiome at this point.
Yeah.
And there's a question about lump or briquettes for charcoal grilling.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of research into that, and I haven't really come up with clear conclusions. I think I'm cooking with lump these days. It's supposedly pure because indeed there are additives to briquettes to make them cook evenly, to make them cook consistently, which are not bad features, you know. And if I'm using charcoal to heat wood, as I demonstrated earlier, and to do like a long smoke, say I'm going to smoke a brisket or something, or a pork shoulder, and I need the coals to go for, you know, a few hours, and I need consistent temperature, briquettes will work very well. For just grilling like this, I'll use lump charcoal. But again, charcoal is wood that's had 99% of its wood-like characteristics taken out, and whether it's lump or briquettes. So they don't have that much flavor left in them, and I don't think it makes too huge a difference. And again, I'll just say my favorite thing to do is to use pure wood coals. And I learned that from another very inspirational restaurant for me in Spain. And that chef, it's a place called Echevarri. It's
I love that place.
Yeah. He, when you ask him, like, what is the most important thing about your kind of cooking? He's like, only use wood coals. And so I think that's really true. And so actually, Erin and I are about to start working on a new book for 2023, and it's kind of on the intersection of grilling and smoking. And I really plan, as long as Erin agrees, to really try to take that in the direction of wood coals, which makes the process, again, longer, dirtier, harder. But if you have the time and you like to spend time outside or whatever, I'm going to come up with the best ways to sort of create your own supply of wood coals to shovel into your grill or whatever. We're gonna work on that question. And in fact, this winter we have a fireplace. I did a lot of cooking in the fireplace, you know, which is another interesting art, and so I want to pursue more. So yeah.
Jordan, we're gonna have to sign you up for our next series. We'll just change the topic.
That's right. Hey, we should do a fireplace cooking. That would be really fun.
We should. That would be amazing.
In the winter,
yeah.
In the winter. Yeah.
Yes.
November, December.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. And there's one other question, and I think you're probably fine answering this, Jordan, from Sarah Morgan, about curious why you're moving to the Hudson Valley if it's not too personal to share.
Oh, no, happy to share. A number of reasons, but oh, and sorry that I'm so dark here. We have this canopy of trees, you know, which is nice since I'm not in the sun, but I can see that I'm a little dark. A couple of reasons. One, we've just been terrorized by the fires here in the last few years. last year being the worst, where we were evacuated twice for a total of 6 weeks from our house, and that's how long it took for power and our water to come back. So we just didn't bother living here, even though the fire was out and danger had passed after a few weeks. But we were still couldn't come back for, and that's on top of we get rolling blackouts because our power company turns off the power when it's high winds and hot temperatures. And again, we're on a well. We're slightly rural where we are, so when the power goes out, our water goes out, and it's just we're not set up to kind of live like that. And then on top of that, we just were ready for a change, for a new adventure, live in a new place. Christy and I, we both lived in California for 20 years now. For me, it'll be exactly the month that we move. It'll be exactly 20 years in California, and I love it here, and it's amazing. But just ready for new adventure. And Christy, who teaches at the Culinary Institute here in St. Helena, she is just transferring to their larger mothership campus, which is in the Hudson Valley. So she gets to keep her job, and I can do my writing from anywhere. And I will be, and then we'll be able to go and instead of exploring the Mendocino coast and driving up to Oregon and all of that, we'll be able to go to Montreal and Quebec and Maine and
The Finger Lakes.
yes, the Finger Lakes,
Vermont,
Riesling and
yeah.
Pinot Noir location, of course.
Yeah.
And
Wines.
yeah. So anyway, so it's just a little bit of both, a little bit of climate refugee, a little bit of just a new chapter, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Sarah.
Yeah, we'll miss you being so far away.
But you know, it's still just a plane ride.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someday we'll be back on planes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of questions have been asked about how people get more rub. So I think we need to continue to make this rub available.
Yes.
For our Brooks customers. That would be awesome. So thank you, Jordan, for so much work in that. And you know, who knows, there might be a whole new product that we've developed as far as this program.
Yes.
Yep.
Well,
that
Janie, listen,
so we should talk about that.
I will license the recipe to you, Chef Norma, and I will license for free until it blows up. Until if we get purchased by Kraft or Nestle or something. Okay, I will need
or Burlap and Barrel. Maybe they'll come out with their first steak bread.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this has been amazing.
Thank you. It's been really fun. I cooked steaks last night too for a friend's birthday party and drank too much. And so the first meal that I've even had today was more steak and more wine. But I feel great. Yeah. Good.
Well, thank you so much for everything, for all of your participation and for helping create the rub and for your friendship. To me and to Brooks, I still have such fond memories during Pebble Beach Food and Wine of stealing you away from the crowds to go have
Just
lunch
like your brother.
together.
Yeah.
You and Christy came when you came to get your dog last year, and you came to Brooks, and we had an amazing lunch at Brooks. That was really fun too. So I just appreciate the friendship from both of you so much.
Well, we do too. And seriously, thank you.
Best,
Thank you
Janie.
for
that was the best, Janie.
thank you for keeping us well greased.
Yeah. I do my part for sure. Christy, good luck. I'm excited for you. When are you guys moving?
August.
Okay. So a couple months. Maybe I'll see you. We'll try to figure out if I can come up on my way to Oregon next.
Oh, we'd love it, Janie. You'd be so welcome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Please.
Great.
And Bree as well. Thank you for excellent moderation and all of your brilliant additions. And you're welcome to come by too if you want before August. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to if I can make it down. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Jordan. It was so fun doing this with you, and so good to meet you, Christy. And I hope our paths cross again soon.
They will.
That's great. All right. So thank you, Jordan, Christy, and Bree. So thank you to everybody who participated. Really fun. We'll do what we've done in the past, which we will go back through the questions and put together a Q&A document if there was anything that wasn't answered. Also give you more information on how to find the rubs. But thank you very much for all of your participation today. It was really, really fun. I just wish I was out in my yard with a barbecue. Good news. So Bree and I have already put our heads together and have a good draft for the Beyond Brooks season 2. It will start in September. It'll run September through May. We have a whole bunch of new topics. We have a couple of returns, which now sounds like it's going to include Jordan, which will be amazing. And we're just very, very grateful for the support. So I hope that even though the world might be opening back up, it feels like that you will all want to continue to do these events virtually, because we've drawn in such an amazing crowd from all over the country. And maybe next year you'll be able to have like a little dinner party around it, or event with you and your friends from a virtual standpoint. So we're excited about the series. All of you that have participated, you are going to get a little questionnaire from Bree and I tomorrow, just about ways that we can improve the Beyond Brooks series, any topics that we might be missing that you would be interested to see. So thank you so much for all of that support. We are going to go to the lounges as we do after every event. There's one set up for Jordan, there's one set up for Bree, there's one set up for myself. Feel free to go to whichever one you want. They will be open for an hour, and feel free to move around as well. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being great supporters of Beyond Brooks. Cheers.